Hello my friends, good people. You know, we're always told it's not about your camera, it's all about your creativity and what you can do with it. And while I agree, today my friends, today is all about the gear. So I recently went through a platform shift, no longer with the Panasonic GH5, although while I love this thing, we're now capturing things with the Sony. And it has been a really interesting experience. It's almost like going from a Mac to a PC. You have to learn all the new settings. You have to kind of miss out on the features that you're so familiar with. But still, the A7 III is my camera of choice for now. Now, one of the advantages of me getting this whole new system has been really challenging myself to utilize this camera to its full potential, taking advantage of that autofocus, which has, never been in my production schedule at all. But now, like, doing things like this makes it so much easier. Of course, I cannot see myself, but I trust that it's in focus right on my face. But also, this whole new ecosystem gives me a challenge of trying to do something different and also, giving me that creative little additional drive. So while I know what the GH5 is capable of, it gives me that extra little push when it comes to new gear to try something different, and it also brings me joy. Alright, good people, so in today's video, let's talk about the gear. The what, the why, and the how. And just for reference, all the gear and the links to purchase will be listed in the description below. So if you're looking to upgrade your arsenal, be my guest, and also make sure to check out the playlist about our behind the scenes series where we talk about lighting, tripods, and the rest of the things that were not covered in this little segment about this Sony upgrade. Alright, so for the past 6 months, I've been using a Sony A7 III. I've taken it to Computex, we're going to be taking it to CES, and my experience with it has been extremely satisfactory because it removes the element of like trying to think technically in terms of what I need to do. So autofocus is a big thing. With the GH5, we have the flip out screen, so that's a big thing, but I have to be sitting very close in order to focus on myself. So with the Sony, I'm allowed to, or able to use 55mm or the 85mm lenses, something telephoto and still be tack sharp in focus because of that face tracking, and that has allowed me to do things like this. Hello, I'm looking for some fans. Well, now I know autofocus isn't everything, and I never use autofocus when doing B-roll of product stuff. I always manually focus and make sure that I'm exactly where I need to be. But for on-camera segments like this with native Sony glass, it has been absolutely incredible. Set and forget and just talk. And with the new camera system comes new lenses. Of course, that is an important part of the equation for the whole ecosystem, and this is something that I've always told myself to purchase good quality lenses that I can afford, because most likely they will outlast the body, or I will most likely upgrade the body later, but will keep the lenses. And I'm afraid to admit it, but I've never bought this many primes in such a short amount of time for any other camera system, not for my Canons, not for my Panasonics, not for my Fujis. But because the Sony is a full frame sensor, utilizing the 18-35 doesn't give me the full advantage. So I have to go with full frame glass that covers the entire sensor, and the 28 f2 was my very first lens for the Sony A7 III. And while in Taipei, I found an amazing deal on the 85mm f1.8. What an incredible portraiture lens. This is my second lens in this Sony system. It's awesome for people, beautiful compression, nice bokeh, but it's actually not that bad for tech products, I haven't been able to achieve shots like that with any of my other systems, and it's nice to have full frame once again. And my last prime here is the Zeiss 55mm f1.8 to complete my entire range. The 28mm on the wide angle, the 55mm for that medium, and the 85 for the telephoto portraiture stuff. But the Zeiss 55mm is considered to be one of the most detailed lenses in the world in that 50mm focal range. and I absolutely love it. The shots I can get with this for technology products is absolutely incredible to capture that really fine detail. It has that really analytical character. You know, the bokeh is very smooth. I actually prefer busier bokeh, but the detail out of this thing is absolutely gorgeous. And so my most used lens is the 28mm f2 because of that beautiful bokeh separation. I can get real close, it has all that face tracking. And my latest lens is the 16 to 35 f4. F4 is not really an issue on a full frame sensor. I can still get that nice subject isolation and beautiful bokeh. Plus I can revert to my primes if I really need that. I have like 3D effect with the really insane bokeh. But 16mm on a full frame sensor is absolutely insane. A really unique wide angle perspective. I love this for vlogs, and the 28mm for when I'm doing things that are more stationary. Plus this thing has in-body or in-lens stabilization plus the in-body stabilization. So it gives me a little bit smoother footage versus if I was to use this, it's a little bit shaky. And so those are my lenses. I know it's a little overkill. I've never had this many primes in my entire video production career, but I use the 28mm the most, the 16 to 35 for doing vlog stuff, the 55mm for the beautiful compression, nice reach there, and I can get a little bit closer to the subject, and 85 if I really need that beautiful background compression and nice subject isolation, as long as I'm further away from the camera, because the macro capabilities on the 85mm are not that great. Now my favorite thing about the Sony camera would be the form factor. It's super compact, it's much lighter and smaller versus my GH5, which was already pretty compact, no issues traveling. But now with these prime lenses, which are super light by the way, I can basically travel with the same weight with those 3 primes as I would with the GH5 and the 18 to 35. Now the 4K image on the Sony is absolutely incredible. It's a 6K sensor, I think, that downscales it to 4K, so it is more detailed than the GH5. The Colorscience, everybody complains about Sony Colorscience, but they pretty much fixed it here. I use PP6 and just bring up the saturation a little bit, add a little blue into my shadows so it's not super warm. And that's exactly the look I'm going for. It's been what I've been doing with the GH5, shooting in natural profile and just bumping up the saturation a little bit and contrast. So in terms of the Colorscience, while the Canon delivers that beautiful out-of-the-box image that you can upload immediately without any color grading, I don't mind doing a little bit of work, and no complaints at all about the Colorscience from the Sony camera. The slow motion feature is awesome, 120 FPS at 1080p resolution. While it's not as good as on the GH5 in terms of the actual 1080p image quality, the GH5 is much better with that. Plus we have 4K 60, so you can get those really nice, smooth, cinematic 4K 60 shots, you know, slow them down to 30p or 24p. I'm okay with the Sony because I usually shoot at 120 frames on the GH5 as well, and I don't see that as a compromise. What is a compromise though is the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 4K at 24 FPS, you're utilizing the entire sensor, but if you're shooting at 4K at 30 FPS to get that slightly smoother motion, then the sensor crops in a little bit, and I hate that. And so how about we talk about things I don't like, starting with the screen at the back. I don't care if it's articulating, you know, it'd be nice if it was a flip out screen. It's okay for now, plus autofocus works no problem. What I don't like is the actual pixel quality of that display. I think the screen on the GH5 has ruined me because it is so sharp. I know exactly where my focus point is. With the Sony, I need to enable focus peaking in order to see where my focus is, because the pixel detail, I guess, in video mode is so bad, you have to rely on other tools in order to know what's in focus, and that's a big compromise. Furthermore, to complement this whole screen issue, since you cannot see yourself, many people choose the HDMI display. You can route that into the camera so you know what's happening, especially when doing things on camera. When you do that, face tracking is disabled, which is completely stupid since it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So if, let's say, if you're moving your hand around or if there's a slightly closer object, the camera most likely will focus on that area instead of tracking your face. And the same thing happens when using the app on the smartphone to control the camera. You cannot even tap the focus, which is ridiculous. You can do that with so many other apps, and face tracking is disabled when Wi-Fi is on. Come on. I guess there is no perfect camera. We just have to go around these compromises and actually be aware of those compromises. So hopefully, if you're thinking of the Sony A7 III, these are my main kind of gripes with the camera. And for the first 3 months, you know, let's say when I had the display plugged in, if I moved my hand closer to the camera, it would focus on that instead of my face. And I was wondering why, when face tracking was disabled, all along. All right, enough about me. Let's see what Eber's got.
I think I need a change. Guys, I picked up the Sony A7 III. Dimitri sold me on it, to be honest. Actually, there were a lot of good reviews on this camera online, and it was just a matter of time. But hear me out for a second. I've been using the C100 for the past 4 years, and when you look at this system, it looks amazing. I mean, it's a beast of a camera. I absolutely love shooting with this system because it had a lot of great features. First and foremost, built-in ND filters. Cannot live without them. Also built-in XLR input, so I can directly plug in my shotgun microphone into the camera. It has a great preamp, so I don't have to worry about recording audio externally and syncing it in post. It just helps a lot when it comes to the workflow standpoint. But then I started traveling a lot this year, and I had to actually end up traveling with 2 different cameras. So I picked up the Canon 80D. This one is something that I picked up earlier this year, and it's a fantastic camera for the price. The dual pixel autofocusing system in this camera is just, it's probably way better than the Sony A7 III, and overall, you know, for stills and for video, it's again all around an amazing camera. But if I were to compare the images out of the 80D and the C100 actually does a lot better because the dynamic range is better on this camera compared to the 80D. So it was like switching back and forth, and it just wasn't feasible because I had to shoot a lot of vlogs with this camera, and when it comes to B-roll, I had to switch things up to the C100, and again, didn't really make that much of a sense. And talk about traveling with these gear. It's just not practical because I had to cram everything into this small backpack that I carry, and I didn't really enjoy my experience, especially traveling with both these systems for events and stuff. So I thought really hard. I did a lot of research online, and I ended up actually pulling the trigger. I was so close to pulling the trigger on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K because when you look at the samples online, it is ridiculously. It's so good. It shoots raw video, and the Colorscience is just, oh my god. You know, I was looking at the GH5. It seemed like a pretty good option, but then Micro Four Thirds was something that was holding me back. Still a great sensor, and considering the specs on the A7 III for the price, it just was a no-brainer. In fact, Dimitri was shooting with this camera for a really long time, and so, you know, just looking at his videos, it just made me want to switch to something a little bit different because I was looking for a system that sort of replaces, you know, the C100 and the 80D. So that's why I had to, you know, go for something like this. Now I had to take a few compromises. One, I don't get built-in NDs and I don't get built-in XLRs, but I had to invest in a few other things. So I ended up picking up this variable ND filter that actually does a really good job, you know, for my Sigma lens, and I also have a step-up ring for my 28mm that I have right now. I also ended up picking up this Sigma MC11 adapter. It's a Sony E mount to a Canon EF lens adapter, and it basically adapts my Sigma lens without a problem on the Sony camera, so that's awesome. Now in terms of audio, I ended up picking the Zoom H5, which actually does a really good job with my shotgun microphone. The audio quality is fantastic. I'm not really compromising on the quality side, but the only thing is I have to sync the audio in post, which is an extra step, but I'm willing to take that sacrifice. What I'm really impressed with the A7 III is the image quality. The 4K image is just out of the world. Way better than the C100, much more sharper, because if you think about it, it's a 6K sensor that downscales to 4K, and you know, you wouldn't be wrong, or you wouldn't go wrong with this camera at all, because, you know, if you're looking for a system that can shoot great video, you know, A7 III is a great choice, but no camera is perfect, but I'm just willing to give this a try, and I'm looking forward to spending, you know, the rest, maybe 2 or 3 years shooting with this camera. So now I don't have to carry 2 cameras at the same time when I'm traveling. I can just rely on the A7 III because it's compact, it's portable. It also shoots great video, so I can just toss it in my backpack and hit the road, and it'll ease my life a lot better. Well, that's been pretty much my experience with the A7 III. I'm really enjoying it so far. Back to you, Dimitri.
Thank you, Eber. I think it was about time to retire the C100 and welcome to the Sony camp. And with this whole upgrade, I realized that my expectations for a full frame look were not as they were before. I used to shoot on the 5D, that was a beautiful image, but now gotten so accustomed to the GH5, the micro four thirds, like sensor size, I tend to stop down my lenses to achieve like a similar look instead of having that super shallow depth of field. Because, you know, I guess our tastes change as we move from one camera system to another. And it's almost like I'm trying to imitate the GH5 aesthetic on the Sony camera while also implementing those full frame, beautiful depth of field look on the Sony just as well. All right, so that is my gear. I think I've become a lot more efficient doing trade shows, CES, Computex, and whenever we do anything travel-wise, because the camera is so light, lenses are super compact. We have autofocus, fantastic low light performance, excellent 4K image, nice slow motion, although not as good as the GH5, but we compromised there a little bit. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the Sony A7 III. If you have any questions about the system, let me know in the comments below. I'll make sure to chime in as much feedback and you know, opinion about the whole system as possible. I'm Dimitri. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check out this other relevant content, subscribe to our new Boot Sequence channel, and we'll see you in the next video.